How about those Pirates, baby? Welcome into Hoist the Colors. Of course, I had to start that way. Your Pirates just notched not one, but two ranked wins, taking down number 23 Providence at the Amp before a thrilling win over number 7 Marquette at the Rock. I'm Tim Best. He's Pat Madden. Pat, I hope you're in as good a mood as I am to talk about these wins.
Absolutely. Saturday's game was about one of the most exciting I've been to in a while. How many times has Seton Hall beat a top 10 team? I mean, obviously it's happened twice in the last month. So, you make that statement and then you're like, hey, I've seen it twice in the last 3 weeks. In a lot of senses, it was more exciting because the game the game wasn't decided until the final seconds. I mean, it didn't really have to be that way, but that then you're thinking one of the things I said, sort of early in the game was that Marquette dictated the tempo in the first 6 to 7 minutes of the game. I mean, when you're putting up 23 points in like 8 minutes, I mean that's really telling you that what Marquette was trying to do was put a knockout punch early. But Seton Hall tightened defense up. If it wasn't for Alamir Dawes hitting threes, Marquette would have had a much bigger lead. But then the defense stepped up. The rebounding was great all day. Uh, you know, Richmond couldn't be stopped. He's taking a lot of people talk about Stevie Mitchell being one of the most underrated defenders in the Big East. And maybe he looks good on defense when he's playing other guys. Well, Kadari Richmond just makes everyone look like they're just they're a traffic cone. It's just the way he just drives to the hoop. Basically almost gets anything he wants. Driving the lane, getting baskets, getting to the line. He wasn't all Big East Player of the Week for nothing. We'll probably talk a little bit later about the performance he had against Devin Carter, another one of those guys who gets talked a lot about being an Big East Defensive Player of the Year. Yet Richmond, lays him the waste as well in the upset went up in Providence on Wednesday night. Everyone made a contribution. Dylan Adewusu hits a couple of threes in the first half when they needed some offense. And then Dre Davis was struggling Saturday afternoon, but gets two big baskets in the last 3 minutes. The breakaway that I think gave him an 8-point lead. And then he hits that one.
I think it got up to 10, actually.
His basket made it 8. I think Richmond's dunk made it 10. One or the other.
It might have been. I think it was the other way around.
Yeah, but he gets the basket with like 2 minutes to go, the breakaway dunk, and then he gets that freakish basket, which I had no idea how he puts that ball in. The one I think that gave him the 3-point lead when Marquette, made the big charge in the last couple of minutes that forced Marquette to take a couple of bad threes down the stretch. That really sealed the deal. It kept Marquette from getting an opportunity, I think, in the last minute to take the lead with only having to deal with 1-point deficit.
So, I mean, let's backtrack. I mean, let's start with the win at Providence. The fact that in the last 3 seasons, Providence has lost a total of 4 times at home, and Seton Hall's handed out 2 of those L's. Last year, we all know what happened, where they smacked the Friars by 24. This time, a lot closer. I know there's the big asterisk because Bryce Hopkins blew out his knee with about 5 minutes into the second half. First and foremost, we want to send our well wishes to Bryce because he's a really unbelievable player at 6'7", plays the stretch 4, as well as anyone in the Big East. He was a Player of the Year candidate last year. And unfortunately, he has that blowout with his knee, torn ACL. He's done for the year. So we want to send him nothing but well wishes as, he recovers and hopefully recovers soon from that knee injury. And, he's fully healthy by the start of next season. But even with that, Seton Hall goes up 5 at the break. And even without Hopkins, Providence makes the charge and they went up 1 in like the final 5 minutes. And this is the part of the game I'm thinking, oh shit. Like now the crowd's really into it. Even with no student section, they're alive now. It could come unglued, but Seton Hall composed themselves so well. And I think that speaks to how this team has evolved and it's almost like a 180 from how they were just a month prior, where they got down big against Rutgers and they dug themselves too deep of a hole. And here they relinquished the lead against Providence, but instead of letting everything unravel and letting shit hit the fan, they 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 hunkered down and they won the game. And Al Dawes with that three where like you think Willie or won't he, and then he pulls up and hits it. Oh man, that was I couldn't have been more proud of the effort and just the response. Instead of letting them unravel after blowing that lead, Providence surges up one late after being down. Pretty sure they were down double digits at one point. But instead of letting it all go downhill, they responded in a tough environment.
Well, Dre Davis, of course, was out of his mind in that second half. 17 points for the game overall. Really took advantage of not having to deal with Hopkins on both ends because he's doing the primary defense of Hopkins when Hopkins was in the game for the first 25 minutes. And then Hopkins is providing a barrier to what some of the stuff that Davis does best, which is to drive the lane, get inside or pull up for, 10-foot jumpers. Hopkins has the ability to hold a player like Dre Davis at bay, whereas then you switch off to sometimes Carter was guarding him, sometimes Ticket Gaines was guarding him. I think they let Floyd try to guard him one or two times, and Davis is just too big and too athletic for those guys. As good as they might be defensively, he's just got too much working for him. I think there was a clip where I think Gary Cohen had a clip where he said that he's one of the best what they call 3D scorers. A 3D scorer, obviously, someone who can hit from three, someone who's got a mid-range game, and someone who could go inside. And Davis can do all of those things and does them as well as a lot of other people in the Big East can. I think he's totally underappreciated. He's never going to be in the conversation for Player of the Year. He's probably not going to be in the conversation for All Big East. Yet you need guys like that who just do the work, and that's all Dre. That's all Dre wants to do. All he wants to do is do what it takes to help his team win on any given day. And then we get to Alamir Dawes, who, I think a lot of people, when he hit that three that gave us the 4-point lead with 2 minutes to go, were saying, no, all these people are like, at everything Dawes was throwing up in the month of December, seemed to hit the rim or seemed to go in and out. And now he's taken a few of these shots and they found the bottom of the basket. Plus, he had a couple of really good drives on Jaden Pierre down the stretch, which really helped, Seton Hall keep that lead and keep themselves in a position where, they held Providence off at the end. Of course, the play of the game might have been Jaden Bediako standing up to Josh Oduro, trying to hit the game-tying, hoping to hit a game-tying layup or, get a and one to give Providence let Providence sneak out of there with the win. But Bediako played tremendous. I think he had even 4 fouls at the time that play was made.
Yeah, he actually had 3. EHE had 4, but Bediako had 3.
He only had 3. Okay, well, the point is he stands up to Oduro, forces Oduro to miss, and then Wusu gets the rebound, hits the 2 foul shots, and wraps that one up. So, it was, as Seton Hall's going to have a lot this season, it's going to be a team effort. It's going to take, Richmond, Dawes, Davis, Bediako, and then you get some help from guys like Everett and Coleman and, maybe even Sanders to, get them victories. It's not going to be something where you get a Joel Soriano dominates a game or an Eric Dixon of Villanova dominates a game. It's going to take everyone playing together. And that's one thing which a lot of people were saying over the weekend. is that now the core group has bought in. Kadari Richmond said that on an interview with Dave Popkin on his show, Crashing the Boards, yesterday morning, where he's talked about a team effort. They've all bought into what Shaheen Holloway wants them to do. And you're starting to see the fruits of that with these types of victories that we've seen since the Connecticut game 2.5 weeks ago.
So another thing, by the way, I mean, first of all, that defensive play, just you do exactly what what you're taught, straight up. And I thought Oduro, I'm like, oh God, he's got it, and he's got a wide open, a good look. But Bediako did just enough to alter the shot. Maybe Oduro put a little bit too much English on it, trying to go to his left hand, which is his not non-dominant hand, and then for Dillon to come up with a rebound. I mean, he got a double-double, 12 points, 11 rebounds, that 11th rebound being so instrumental. And then for him to calmly go to the line, hit the 2 free throws to ice the game. That's so huge. And here we were about a month ago, we were clowning Adewusu, thinking that Isaiah Coleman was going to be the answer and that like he needed to take Dillon's spot in the lineup. And over the last month, he has shut everyone up, including the two of us. And he's not going to put up a ton of points, but he does so much that you won't find on a stat sheet that alters the outcome of games. And that's why we were so big, so much of a stand for him in the preseason. And now it's finally come to fruition. It's super rewarding, and he truly embodies what a Shaheen Holloway guy is and exactly why Shaw even brought him in from St. John's in the first place.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. You look at the stat sheet and you look at the fact he was playing at St. John's and the conventional wisdom of people who think they know basketball is that everyone who left St. John's, there was a good reason why Patino kicked all of those guys from St. John's off, from Wusu to Alexander to AJ Storr to Andre Curbelo to David Jones. And everyone looks at Wusu's stats and he's like, he's averaging 9 points a game, 38% from three. Is that really a good, but first of all, he's doing it against Big East competition. And secondly, no one is noticing all of the little things he does. He just stacks up. I mean, I was sitting with a couple of Marquette fans and they said, this guy looks like he could be a linebacker, but he's got enough speed and athleticism where he uses that size to disrupt people. I mean, he drew Devin Carter most of the night on Wednesday, and Carter was off. I mean, I was waiting for Carter to take the game over when Hopkins went out, because I think when Hopkins went out, we were up by 5. So if Hopkins went off the way he did some of those games, like he did against Butler, like he did against Marquette earlier in the season, then clearly Carter could have pulled enough, given that game was close, where he could have propelled Providence to a victory last Wednesday night. But because he had a guy like Dylan Adewusu defending him, who knows him because he played him last season, he caused Carter to miss just enough shots to throw him off of his game. And then you fast forward to Saturday afternoon, where he's given the assignment basically of trying to guard Cam Jones. And even though Jones had 15 points, Jones was not nearly as dangerous as Jones has looked at other situations, either earlier this season or last season, when a lot of people thought he was just going to be the leading scorer in the Big East. So those are the things which Wusu, I think, is still in the top 10 in steals in the Big East. All the hallmarks of a really good defensive player, that even if he only scores, 7, 8, 9, 10 points, he's doing it on both ends of the court. And you need guys like that in order to be a winning team, as opposed to a team that maybe looks good.
And the fact that, by the way, we actually won a big game in those gray jerseys, it's just, I was just relieved. I'm like, okay, great. We're gonna have at least the split against 2 ranked opponents. Good stuff. I would have been more than okay. even if we lost to Marquette, as long as we didn't get killed. And Marquette, to the exactly what you said. They dictated the tempo early. They got hot. I think they started off like 10 for 14, and then the defense finally put the clamps down. They really, and they specifically clamped down on Tyler Kolek. For him to go, for the joke being for him to go 1 for 6 on January 6th. It's so funny. It's so funny, especially given the fact that everyone saw the video of him saying that he was going to quote unquote beat that ass to a fan pregame, and Seton Hall, in turn, they beat his ass by just completely disrupting him. And even with big game, Oso Iguodala turns into Will Chamberlain anytime we play him for some reason. Cam Jones, and David Joplin, specifically, it was Iguodala and Joplin had big games. But Seton Hall, despite that, they blocked it all out. They clamped down on the defensive end after Marquette got hot. And even though they got that 10-point lead late and it dissipated quickly, they composed themselves again. They took a deep breath and went back to the roots, played strong defense and good enough defense to leave with that win. What was your analysis overall? Another outstanding performance.
Right. I mean, I think we got back to it a little bit earlier, which was that, you know, there's when they're down 10, they basically then, you know, they dodged it enough scoring to keep them in the game. And then the other thing they did, which was different than what we saw in the games against like USC and Iowa, was they came all the way back from the double digit deficit, as opposed to some of those games we saw in the non-conference when they would get to within a couple of possessions, but then the momentum just stopped. They didn't stop the momentum. Now, again, that was in part because Dawes was playing out of his mind. That was because Richmond started to get things going. Getting the ball down low. Even Everett hit this shot, which he had no business. He basically took it from his hip, from like 5 feet away, hoisted the thing up, getting fouled in process, and the ball just somehow gets in the basket. I think it was the one that got us within two. I think it was like 24-20 or 25-21 when, Everett hits the circuit shot and, gets the margin back to one. So they just made plays to close the gap and then to forge out to, I think, a 5 or 7 point lead in the first half, and making sure they had the lead at halftime. Part of me is like, I'm glad we're up at the half against these guys. We can take that home with us if Marquette makes the big run on us in the second half. But then Marquette never made that run, in part because Kolek, who can usually be counted upon to hit a few shots when Marquette needs them, like he did when he was taking over games out in the Maui Invitational back around Thanksgiving. He just didn't have it. Maybe it's the Prudential Center. Maybe he's going to be glad he's never going to have to play a game in the Prudential Center, at least not as a – no, he's not going to play there as a pro. He's probably glad he's never going to play in the Prudential Center, because some guys just can't hack it in certain buildings. I mean, he wasn't very good last year when they blew us out by 20. So he just doesn't have the range. Cam Jones, to a greater extent, seems to have the range. David Joplin was pretty silent during the non-conference, and Joplin has a better than average game on Saturday, although Joplin played no defense, which ultimately was the big complaint of Marquette fans after the game, was that they were wondering, where was the defense? Nobody could get a rebound. I think one of the things I looked at was that Iguodala had 8 rebounds. The rest of the team had 17. So where's Joplin on the rebounds? Where's Mitchell on the rebounds? Where's Jones on the rebounds? Where's Ben Gold, their backup center, getting any rebounds? So part of the things, we took advantage of the things that Marquette doesn't do well, getting offensive rebounds, getting second chances, taking advantage of that in order to pull out pull out the win. A win against Marquette, I don't matter how good it looks, It's a win. It's a Big East win. We need to get probably another 9 of them to guarantee an NCAA bid. So, it's a step in the right direction.
So, by the way, the total rebounding edge, I'm looking at this now. It was 43-25. Bediako specifically had 11 rebounds, and he had 3 on the offensive glass. The fact that we got 6 from EHE, that's huge in 16 minutes. And then like we had 0 bench points against Providence. We had 12 in this one. Isaiah Coleman had 4 points. Jaquan Sanders had a pretty nice floater in the first half. Kadari doing his thing, 21 points, 3 boards, 5 assists, scoring at will on Mitchell in the second, most of which in the second half. Bediako only had 2 points, but those 11 rebounds were huge, absolutely huge. And then I'm trying to look at what was another important line in that was crucial. With Kolek, by the way, what was one of the keys I told you in order for Seton Hall to win this game? They were going to have to not only make sure Kolek was going to have a bad game and not shoot well, they needed to turn him over. And they turned him over 3 times. I mean, 3 times doesn't seem like a lot, but this is a guy who had the best assist to turnover ratio in the conference last year. And the fact they turned him over 3 times, that he's the guy he's the straw that stirs that team's drink. And we kept him from stirring that drink, which that was the thing. And that's what, I talked about how Michigan State clamped him down last year in the NCAA tournament. Shaw must have taken a page out of Tom Izzo's playbook from last year. It's a good thing you didn't take a page out of his playbook this year now. Sorry, Seth Davis. I'm not sorry for that at all. But yeah, and I'm just glad that Nostradam Ice came into play here, and I was right about the making sure Kolek turned it over. But to also, hold Marquette to like 43% from the floor, and then we shot nearly 53%. Like, you could not have asked for especially against Marquette, you couldn't have not asked for a better offensive performance.
Except for the turnovers.
Sure. Well, minus the turnovers. In terms of shooting it,
right. Well, that's the thing. Again, they don't, again, Mitchell, I'm sure some Marquette analytic nerd is going to point something out about people having some off the wall defensive efficiency, Mitchell having off the wall defensive efficiency against everybody else, and to call a game like this a one-off. But let's be honest. Mitchell's not, on paper, Mitchell is not a good matchup against Richmond. And that was, unfortunately, he's the one. You can't put Kolek's too small to guard him. They tried Sean Jones, their little, 5'11" backup, who is the fastest guy in the Big East. But if Richmond, if he couldn't strip the ball from Richmond, he had no hope of containing Richmond. Then they try to throw Cam Jones off him on a couple of possessions. Cam Jones was hopeless. So then basically the only option that Shaka Smart has, 1-to-1. He only really had 2 options. One was Mitchell. The other was he goes to zone a little bit in the second half and thinks that zone is throwing Seton Hall off. Well, what happens is that Richmond gives the ball off to Wusu and/or Dawes to play the point, and then Richmond swings in to get to the top of the lane, and Richmond does some damage when he gets the ball off the top of the lane in the middle of the zone. So, they really had no defensive strategy. The only defensive strategy, and the strategy that worked in the closing minutes, was a trap. They go to a 1-2-2 full court trap, which caused the turnovers. Hopefully between now and when we get the rematch with Marquette, I think it's on the 27th, if memory serves me right. It's in about 2.5 weeks. Yes, 2.5 weeks. There's the return matchup at Milwaukee. Hopefully in the next 2.5 weeks, after Seton Hall gets through, that the gauntlet of the schedule they have coming up. Hopefully when we have time to focus upon Marquette, we'll probably have to work a little bit this for St. John's. next week. But to work against the press defense that either decides to pick you up full court or picks you up half court, that was something I think that Seton Hall struggled with. And that's something with all the good ball handlers between Dawes, Richmond, Wusu, Dre Davis. You can bring Jaquan Sanders. You can bring Coleman in, who can handle the ball a little bit. They have enough ball handlers where they can figure out how to break a zone press. But that's something which they're going to have, which they obviously showed they had to work on because Marquette played that effectively to almost steal it in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, when we went up 10, especially after Kadari had a breakaway dunk and then it was Dre, like going up 10, I was like, yo, we got this in the bag. Like I was fired up and like this is over. And then all of a sudden it's down to 3. You're like, oh shit. And like
Or down to 1. Never mind 3.
I think, yeah, Shot called the timeout when it got down to 3. And that's when I started going, oh shit. But for them to find a way to make sure that they didn't blow it completely or even let it to get to overtime. That was huge. And I mean, it also helps that, their last second inbound play didn't work as planned because they were trying to go Bryce Drew, although it was different in the sense that they were doing it from the front court, I believe, and Iguodala caught it around half court, and then he was going to have Joplin was going to flank him on his right side, and he overthrew him in his miscommunication, and it goes the other way, and that's when I was like, okay, I think we got this now. So the fact that we not only did we get 2 ranked wins this past week, now we have wins against that dreaded top 3, UConn and Marquette and Creighton. You talked about, we'd be lucky if we get 1 win. The fact that we have to circle back on it. We have to. We've got 2 now. This is great. Right. I'm loving it.
Well, it's a lot easier to get to 12 when you get, because now, for better or worse, now Seton Hall needs 9. And 4 of them, including who we face tomorrow night, are against the bottom feeders at Georgetown and DePaul. So if they take care of business against those 2 teams, you're down to only needing 5 wins out of the remaining, I think it's 14 games. So I really that makes the path to getting to 12 wins a heck of a lot easier than it looked when we started conference play 2.5 weeks ago. But I mean, that's it. But again, you have to take care. You can't just be so thrilled that you're getting votes in the AP poll. You can't be thrilled that you're getting Player of the Week honors. You can't be thrilled that every college analyst in the country, is propping you up. Seton Hall's finally getting in the brackets. I don't think we had been in anybody's bracket before people started putting them out yesterday and today. So now you can't just for example, the 2015 team got ranked right before all the chaos happened, on and off the court. Luckily, this group is a lot more mature than the team Whitehead's freshman year. They were relying a lot on Whitehead, Delgado, Carrington, to a lesser extent, Desi Rodriguez. You had that tension between the freshmen and Sterling Gibbs and the veteran players on that team. This is a bunch of experienced guys. All 5 guys in the starting lineup, seniors are better. Bediako, Wusu, Davis, Richmond, Dawes. So they've been through this before. They're not gonna sit back and be thrilled that they got some votes this week, or thrilled that everyone's pumping us up. Hopefully they'll keep focused on this business trip coming up this week with the game at Georgetown tomorrow night and then the game Saturday afternoon out at Butler.
So I was looking at some brackets, I think made for March. I saw them have Seton Hall as a 9th seed. Um, I'm trying to see what. So Jonathan Warner, who I've had on the Igloo, he has Seton Hall. I gotta find him. I gotta find him there somewhere. He has Seton Hall as a 10 seed. As of today. So I'm just trying to look around and see like okay, like we
They
weren't on
weren't even on
anyone's
the
radar.
radar. They weren't on. Nobody was even talking about an NCAA bid going into last week, and now all of a sudden the resume just looks remarkably better than it did a week ago. But again, you can't. You have to play the long game. You can sit again. The 2015 team had knocked off Villanova uh, first week of January.
And St.
Uh,
John, who was top 15.
Knocked off St. John's on New Year's Eve. Then beat Josh Hart and Villanova. The next game after that, uh, they stayed in the rankings, I believe, winning a game at Creighton. I don't know if Creighton was that good that season, but they
That was
managed.
that was the first year post Doug McDermott. They were bad, but of course Gibbs to the rescue, hits a bomb from three, and then yeah, trust me, like dude, you're giving me PTSD because I had to
Right,
live through. I had to live
but
through that shit.
the fact remains. I mean, we've seen teams like I can remember. I think it was 2011. That I forgot who we beat. Uh, who we beat like in the second week of January. That was that was a Hazel Fuquan Edwin team. It was either 2010 or it was. I think it was. I think it might have been. I think it might even been Bobby G's last year, where they pull off a couple of wins early in Big East play, get ranked.
I think it was the year Seton Hall. If it wasn't for a horrible last week, they would have been NCAA tournament. So it was
That would have been
2012.
2012.
So year two of
So
Willard.
Edwin was still there, I believe. Hazel must not have been there. One of them wasn't there. Point
Yeah.
is, we've seen this script before with the Pirates overachieving in January and then forgetting how to play the rest of the season. So that's just sort of something where where these guys now have to just take ownership of where they are and where they're at. And again, the good news is that you have Richmond, who was on the 2022 team that worked its way through the Big East schedule to get a bid. Uh, I forgot if Dawes ever made an NCAA tournament down at Clemson. I want to say he did, but don't quote me on that.
If he was there in 2021, then yes.
Okay, so Dawes has been obviously Davis was at Louisville and Louisville hasn't been it. And Wusu is it. But the point is, you've got a veteran team that just knows the history, knows that they know how to take care of business when everyone is there and everyone is healthy. If we're using last season as any example of that, and that's where you have to look at this week and say, beat Georgetown. Don't even let that game be close. Because although Georgetown, you're not going to minimize Jaden Epps. They still have Dontre Style, who's very good. Supreme Cook's been one of the better transfer pickups in the conference this season, and he gives people fits on the boards. But you got to play your game, because Georgetown still doesn't play any defense. Even though they beat DePaul, look, I don't think anybody's maybe the sickos are giving them a trophy for being DePaul on Saturday. But other than that, no one left that game thinking that Georgetown basketball was back in any stretch of the imagination. And this is still a team that you've got to take a lead off early, put the foot on the gas, and don't let up. The way, look, Butler did that out at Hinkle a few weeks ago. Marquette did that. I think it was right before Christmas. So this is good teams beat Georgetown down and keep them down. And if you're a good team, that's what you have to do tomorrow night. You have to score early, often, jump out to a lead, and don't look back. Don't let these guys sneak out, because we know, based on what Jaden Epps did when they pulled that miracle out against American in the middle of November, that if Jaden Epps, if you keep them within striking distance, Jaden Epps can hit a bunch of threes off you down the stretch, and you might leave Washington with an L. So don't let a team, don't give Georgetown an excuse to feel better about themselves. Getting a win in Big East play. They haven't gotten a win in Big East play this early in 3 or 4 years. You got the last the 2021-22 team, which didn't win a Big East game. And then last year's team didn't win a Big East game until the last week of January.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first time Georgetown has won. And even the year they won the Big East tournament, I think they only won one game in the Big East before they went in a COVID pause in the middle of January of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't had, as much as people are ragging on Georgetown right now, they haven't one win this early in Big East play is something they haven't seen in a while. And you don't want to let them build confidence in this game because sees this as a winnable game. I think Georgetown looks at it and says, look, if we do our thing, if Epps goes off, if Cook dominates on the boards, if Styles can make enough plays on both ends, they think they can hang with Seton Hall. So and that's something where you don't want to give you don't want to give Ed Cooley a situation where his team gets some confidence, and makes this a close game, whatever it is, and then you let them pull because they even fell down 15 against TCU and had all but come back in that game. So this is a team that can be very dangerous if you let them hang around or if you don't put them away when you have the chance.
Yeah, so these are the points I want to make about Georgetown specifically. So first off, Seton Hall has played. They played up to the level of Connecticut, Providence, and Marquette, and they played down to the level of against to the level of Xavier. Look what happened in all those games. They played up to the level of those three very good teams and beat them all. They played down to the level of Xavier, who's 1-2 in the Big East, and they lost to them. So with that in mind, you cannot, especially coming off those two big wins, you cannot allow yourselves to play down to the level of Georgetown. And like you said, let them hang around because that's the one thing. Like you give them a little, if you open the door just a little bit, that might be enough wiggle room for them to see the light and push through to get a big win like that. And the thing is, so I think if you get through that, and at this point, I don't care how much you beat them by, just win the game first and foremost. But preferably, yeah, get out ahead of them early enough where you don't allow them to hang around until garbage time. But I would feel a lot more confident about getting a win there and then taking that into Hinkle Fieldhouse against Butler. This Butler team, they're 1-3, but it's not like they've been bad. They beat Georgetown, and then they should have beat Providence at the end. They had a lead against UConn, and then they just ran out of gas, and UConn found a way to win, and Dan Hurley won a close game. Good for him. And then before that, they had St. John's, and that was the one actual bad game that they played. So their 1-3 record shouldn't be indicative of the kind of caliber team that they are. They're still 10-5. Thad Matta is clearly doing something right for them to start off 9-2 and almost knock off Providence at the Amp, and then have a lead against UConn at Hinkle. So
they have dudes. You've talked about them probably on the Igloo. Pierre Brooks looked almost unstoppable at times on Friday night in that game up in Connecticut. He's a lot. He fits. He's a little bit of a shorter version of Kadari Richmond in the sense that he's probably got a better jump shot. So it's going to be up to probably Richmond and Wusu to keep the clamps down on Pierre Brooks, and then they get DJ Davis, who is about as combustible a scorer as you're going to see in the Big East. That's a guy who can just rattle off 10 points in a 2-minute spurt if you're not careful with DJ Davis. So that's probably more of an assignment for, let's say, Alamir Dawes Wusu will probably get a little bit of run against DJ Davis. And then maybe if you want to say the third head of that monster is one of everyone's favorites, Posh Alexander. Now, Alexander, of course, is not the scorer and the shooter that Brooks and Davis are, but Alexander does it on both ends. Alexander is every bit the defense. I mean, he was Big East Defensive Player of the Year in 2021 when he was a freshman. And he still has those quick hands and he still has those good defensive instincts so that he can cause some disruption depending on whether he gets the assignment to guard. He'll probably get the assignment to guard Dawes most of the night. But there are going to be times they could switch him off on Richmond and cause Richmond some aggravation because of his quick hands, because he moves well on the defensive end, and maybe he can slow Richmond down a little bit. I mean, the other key to that game is getting contribution from the bigs because two things have to happen here. One is you can't let Pierre Thomas and Andre Sweet put up decent numbers in that game because Davis is going to get his, DJ Davis, that is. Brooks is going to get his. So at that point, you don't need Sweet and Thomas to get theirs because then so that's up to Bediako and Everett to do their part. And Bediako and Everett can do damage on the inside against those guys because honestly, they really do not, they're not elite defensive players. Thomas is not really a center. He's more of a power forward who's being asked to play center for Butler. And Sweet, very good. But I hate to say it, there's a reason a guy like that had to settle for going to Bucknell to do his undergrad. He just doesn't have, you saw it against Samson Johnson of Connecticut in stretches when Johnson wasn't in foul trouble on Friday night. Johnson basically had his way with Sweet and Thomas when he was on the court on Friday night. And we know how much Johnson struggled in the game at the Rock 2.5 weeks ago. So and this is no slight on Samson Johnson, who's a good player, but Bediako and Everett should be looking at the film of what Johnson did. And of course, Soriano. Soriano had a big game against Butler up at Carnesecca last week. So look at the film of that and do what you have to do because getting some scoring from those guys will slow Butler down. I mean, that's a matchup where Butler plays, I think, a top 50 tempo in the country, which is why they score so many points, whereas Seton Hall's tempo is closer to the mid 200s. So if Butler gets running and Butler gets scoring, Seton Hall's going to have a hard time keeping up with that. But if you could, this is scary to think we're saying this about a Butler team who, when Laval Jordan was their coach, was notorious for having the slowest tempo or one of the top 10 slowest tempos in the country. Now you got to slow Butler down. And if you're scoring and you're holding them down on the offensive end a little bit, you're dictating the tempo against like we did last season. And last season we dominated Butler twice. So that's something where the guys who are out there, Davis, Richmond, Dawes, they know what they have to do to beat a team like Butler. And if you play your game plan and you take the scouting reports on Butler seriously, you should be able to find a way to beat. Because again, it's shocking people would think this 2 or 3 weeks ago. Seton Hall's a better team on paper than Butler. Yeah. I know that Butler people are very aggressive about, how dare you diss. I'm not going to diss DJ Davis, Pierre Brooks, or Posh Alexander at all. Great players, winning players. But, give me Richmond and Dawes and Wusu and Davis as a unit against, Butler guys who sometimes are looking more for their points and not looking and not really thinking about the big picture of the game. It's a team effort against an individual effort. Now, if individuals are playing out of their minds, they can be dangerous. Look, they knocked off Texas Tech. They knocked off Boise State. They've shown the ability to win games against opponents on their level. But if you play a team game against them and you dictate the tempo and do your thing on the offensive end, Butler's you should have the ability to beat a Butler team who's been particularly vulnerable against good teams this season.
And another guy, I don't want to forget to mention him, Jameel Telfer is their second leading scorer. And he's a guy who is very similar to Dylan Adewusu because he's not very doesn't have a lot of height, but he's got some build to him. Like he's not built like as hefty as Adewusu, but he's got some mass to him that makes him a bit of like an undersized small forward like Adewusu. And then you talk about the bigs, Screen and Jalen Thomas. Screen is he's he's built like a twig. He's tall, but he's not very big muscle wise, and even like he's skinny, and that allows guys like Hutchins Everett and Bediako to feast on that. So that's why I think we have more of an advantage on the inside. But a lot of people forget, with this game being a Hinkle in Indianapolis, homecoming for Dre Davis. And last year during his homecoming, he balled out and then he got hurt and he missed some time because of injury, which absolutely sucked. So in a way, I think Dre is going to be out for blood, but not in the way where like he's going to take someone out, but like he wants to have a big game, putting in a lot of points on this Butler team. We know he's more than capable of that, not just against Butler, but against anybody, but especially against Butler in the sense that Butler is, because of their tempo, they tend to get worn out defensively, and that's why they give up as much as they do, whether points against average is in the lower half amongst the Big East. So a guy like Dre Davis, I think, can have another big outing at Hinkle Fieldhouse, and the extra incentive of him being back in his hometown. And, I think the expectation here, you and I will agree, is a 2-0 week. That's the expectation and obviously the goal. But what are some of the other expectations, maybe personnel wise, that you want to see from Seton Hall in these next two games in order for them to have that successful business trip and sweep it?
You just want everyone playing the way that they've played the last couple of weeks. Don't let the foot off of the gas. Now, one guy we're always going to keep an eye on because he's a lightning rod in many senses is Dawes, who does he come off? I mean, he's been playing out of his mind the last since Big East play started. If you think about it, he was huge against Marquette. He got Player of the Week because of the games against Missouri. Maybe that's before the Big East started. He got Player of the Week because his big game against Missouri 3 weeks ago. So he's been on a little bit of a roll. He's found his stroke in the last few weeks, and you don't want him getting in a position where he starts thinking more about his individual numbers and having to live up to the big games against Marquette and Missouri the last few weeks. You want him to stay within the team concept that if, all right, maybe my shot isn't falling, but maybe I can drive to the basket. Now, again, the question is, who is his defensive assignment on Friday night? It's one thing. I mean, he's going to do it against Jay Heath and Rowan Bromborg tomorrow night. And, those guys are not amongst the best defensive players in the Big East.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you need something from Dawes and his stroke isn't going, he can make up for it driving the lane and hitting some foul shots. Transition off the Friday night, easier said than done when you're going against Posh Alexander. So then maybe you make sure that other players, you talk about Davis, who doesn't really have a great, maybe Pierre Brooks can contain him because of his size. But other than that, Butler doesn't have an elite power forward who is like a 6'8", 6'7" guy who can on paper contain Dre Davis. And then they've got the matchup issues against Richmond. If you don't put Brooks against Richmond, Telford and Davis are not tremendous defensive players. So, again, you don't want to get in a trap with Butler, obviously. because we know they have weapons, and we know what those get. Texas Tech tried to get a track meet with Butler, and they pulled the L. Uh, Connecticut was in a little bit of a track meet with Butler on Friday night until Butler ran out of gas. And unfortunately for Butler, they don't get a lot off of their bench. You know, if one guy I did a feature on for my blog is a guy who projects to be one of the maybe the most dynamic player in Butler history in Finley Bizjack.
Mm-hmm.
But Bizjack has been all but a missing. I mean, Bizjack had a big game against the Division II team and not much else. But if Butler learned, if we look at the flip side of what Butler learned on last week up at Carneseca when Brady Dunlap came out of nowhere and put up 13 points against Butler, the flip side is Seton Hall. If for some reason they get Finley Bizjack involved, and if Bizjack does what he was able to do as a high school player, why he was almost a top 100 prospect coming out of Texas. If he comes off and hits a few threes, that might give Butler a shot in the butt, or a shot that allows them to offset some. That's a guy who would get the Hinkle crowd out of its mind if
Mm-hmm.
he managed to hit a couple of threes on Friday night. But he hasn't done it yet this season. So, I mean, there's a first time for everything. We got to make sure Friday night's not the first time that Finley Bizjack makes his presence known in Big East competition.
So I mean, I hate to correct you, but it's not a Friday. It's a Saturday afternoon. It's a nooner.
Saturday, my mistake. Yeah, you know why? Because Butler was playing last Friday, so I got fixated on Butler coming in whenever over the weekend. We
Yeah.
play. It's a noon start. Uh, that's not so. Yeah, no, my mistake. But the point is, we're playing. But Butler's the second game. You don't want Bizjack to get some momentum. Coming off the bench. That's a guy you got to keep an eye on, even though that's the thing. Davis, Telford, Brooks have been so good that it's easy to overlook a guy like Finley Bizjack. But, again, he hits a couple of threes, and who knows what Butler is when he gets rolling.
Yep. And again, Hinkle Magic, I mean, it nearly worked to their advantage against UConn before they ran out of gas. And the thing is with Georgetown, like the big number one priority, get through Georgetown one game at a time. If you get through Georgetown, then you get Butler, and historically they match up with them very well. Not just with the results over the last few years, but now they match up with them really well because of the mismatch at the four. Dre Davis, whoever he matches up against, should have a field day with them. Bediako and Hutchins Everett should be bullying Jalen Thomas and Andre Screen down low. I'm not going to say they're going to kill them by like 20 plus like they have the last couple of years, but expectation is, we're to win at Butler and then at Georgetown and to be 5-1 in the Big East going into a 3-game homestand with St. John's, Creighton, and Providence. That is ideal considering right now we're in a 4-way tie at the top of the table with UConn, St. John's, and Villanova. And because of the tiebreakers, who technically has that number one spot? I know we're only 20% into the Big East schedule, but technically Seton Hall's got the number one spot right now because of the tiebreakers. So gotta keep this train rolling and sweep this road trip to go into that big 3-game homestand. If we can go in there 5-1, we'll be in a very, very good spot, especially because of the unfortunate injury to Hopkins at the tail end of that 3-game homestand where we get the Friars in the final leg of that home and home. But last bit of housekeeping, Pat, have you got anything else for to round this episode off?
Just a couple of notes that may or may not have anything to do with basketball itself. It was good to see at the Rock on Saturday that that they decided to show off the jerseys that people started buying. Saw a couple of Isaiah Coleman jerseys, saw a couple of Kadari Richmond jerseys, saw that stuff. If you didn't get them as Christmas presents and you want to get your picture shown off on the jersey cam, you may not be able to just settle for the Hall 56 anymore. Go to Onward Setonia. I think it's called Athletes Limited is the site that they direct you to, and you can hook yourself up. You name the player you want. You want Coleman, you want Richmond, you want good old Malachi Brown. If you're that
Yeah.
if you're that inclined, get get the players' jerseys. That money goes to NIL. Some of that money's going straight to the pockets of the guys you're buying the jerseys for. And again, I mean, it's good that Mike McBride is sending the message out by having that's the thing. A lot of people's only contact with Seton Hall basketball is actually being at the games and going to games like the games on Saturday against Marquette. They don't go on Twitter. They basically get their news off the newspapers, or they look at maybe they look at some of the articles that people write about the stuff, but buy the jerseys of the players. If Christmas presents, too late for Christmas presents, birthday presents,
Yeah.
that type of stuff. Hook yourself up with the current with the. I mean, if you've got a vintage jersey you really like, I know that there's a whole bunch of Romaro Gill fans out there that I don't want to take that. If they want to wear Gill stuff, God bless them. I love Romaro Gill, but if you're looking to invest in a new jersey, don't buy a vintage 13. Buy a Jaquan Sanders 13. Let's put it that way.
All right. So my last bit of housekeeping, I want to, give a shout out over on the women's side. Congrats to Coach B on his 200th win as the head coach of the Pirates. It's crazy to see, when he took over, they were bad. I think they were at the bottom of the Big East, under the late Ann Donovan, who is a women's basketball pioneer and legend. But he took over that program into the new Big East in year one. His first year at the helm was the first year of the new Big East, and he, by year two, led him to a regular season title, with a share of it with DePaul, and then another tournament appearance after that. So 15, 16, back-to-back tournament appearances. Haven't been back since, but they've been consistently a solid Big East program, and they got a big win. They beat Butler at Hinkle, ironically enough, on Saturday for his 200th win. And they got a big game tomorrow night, taking on a ranked Marquette squad who on the ropes a little bit. They lost to UConn, and then St. John's picked them off at Carnesecca. So who's to say Seton Hall can't beat them in Walsh? Because for some reason, Walsh has been a house of horrors for Marquette women's basketball. So, and that game's going to be on TV. It's going to be on FS. I believe it's on FS. Yeah, it's on FS1 tomorrow night. So it's a Seton Hall doubleheader. So after the men play against Georgetown 6:30, the women will be on at 8:30 against Marquette. So highly recommend, don't change the channel after the game's over unless you want to have the TV on mute. If JP Carlissimo runs a post-game space, hopefully after a W. But keep that TV on. Don't change the channel and keep FS1 on to support the women's team as they get a national TV opportunity against Marquette. So I think that little PSA is a good place to end this episode. Hopefully, we'll be once again in a jovial mood when we return next week as we preview the 3-game homestand with St. John's, Creighton, and Providence. And of course, going to hopefully recap. Fingers crossed. I'm going to knock on wood as my laptop is on a wooden chair to prop it up, make sure I'm at eye level. Knocking on wood that when we do come back, we would have gone 2-0 and we'll be 5-1 in the Big East. And depending on other results around the country, maybe we'll have a number next to our name. But that remains to be seen. So for Pat Madden, I'm Tim Best. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Hoist the Colors. And until next time, onwards to Tonia.